Governor Walz for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Lynch, and members of the committee. I'm proud to be here today as the governor of the great state of Minnesota. Wherever you go in this country, people tend to want the same basic things: safe neighborhoods, affordable household goods, meaningful work, good schools. That's what my administration has worked to ensure for our people, and that's what we've delivered. Under our leadership, Minnesota has been ranked the fourth best state to live in, the second best state to raise a family in, and the third best state for jobs. And when it comes to serious crime, Minnesota has hit its lowest level in over 3 decades, and we consistently have lower violent crime rates than the U.S. average.
Donald Trump has been in serious cognitive decline for some time now, and the mainstream media just refuses to cover it. But Democrats are making sure that they have no choice. And one prominent Democrat who has been speaking to Donald Trump more than any other over the past couple of weeks just went public with a call between the two of them that exposes how much Donald Trump has clearly lost it in a health scandal is erupting. Because we're going to get into it all. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way in supporting us and independent media, which is so important in this moment. Now, before we can get into the call between the governor and Trump that is exposing this health scandal first, I want to start with a different governor, Tim Walz, who is testifying before Congress today on Donald Trump's illegal immigration attack.
Now, we have a broken immigration system in this country. I think everyone in this room agrees with that. But nothing Minnesota has done to serve its own people stands in the way of the federal government managing border security and policies. While you've convened this hearing to explore the issue of so-called sanctuary states, Minnesota is not even a sanctuary state. Minnesota legislature has passed no such bill making Minnesota a sanctuary state, and I have signed no such law. Minnesota cooperates with federal authorities in a number of ways. When there's a convicted felon in our prisons, we ask about their immigration status and share that information with the Department of Homeland Security. We also cooperate with Homeland Security requests when there's a judicial warrant and when due process has been afforded by our Constitution has been served. But enforcing immigration law is not the role of local and state governments. The fact is, Congress has given federal agencies the authority to enforce immigration laws across this country. That includes Minnesota, and I support them doing so. It's the federal government's job to secure the border. That's why when I was in Congress, I visited the southern border and voted for bills that would have increased funding for Border Patrol, made it easier to hire qualified agents, and deployed advanced technologies to the border. Most importantly, I recognize that securing our border does not mean we sacrifice our constitutional values. Unfortunately, the cruel and misguided policies of this current administration fail to live up to those values. Minnesotans are angry with what they've seen happen to their neighbors. They're angry that the federal government has been snatching people up, putting them in prison, and deporting them without a shred of due process. There's been no notice, no meaningful opportunity to object, and according to the president, no way to get out of these overseas prisons once you end up there. And let's be clear, many of these are law-abiding Americans, people who have been granted asylum or promised protected status. In many cases, it seems these people were reported not based on a criminal behavior, but how they looked or what they've said and being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Even U.S. citizens, like a 4-year-old boy with cancer, sent to Mexico, away from his father, away from the medical needs, to a country he was not born in or had never been to. Americans deserve a sensible, humane, and effective immigration policy that reduces illegal immigration while protecting fundamental rights. Meanwhile, the administration continues to make life worse for hardworking Americans in a lot of other ways, trying to slash Medicaid, Social Security, Medicare, making basic household goods more expensive, and telling people they just need to do more with less. The American people deserve better. You all have the power to legislate, to investigate this administration's abuse and overreach, and protect the American people. And I have to say, I'm disappointed. At a crucial inflection point in our nation's history, Congress is choosing to spend its time trying to cast blames on states like Minnesota that have no hand in creating this crisis. While we may disagree on the best way to maintain border security and public safety, I know we should all be able to agree on a few principles. That everyone in America deserves due process, and that we live in a free country where people should not be locked up for exercising their basic constitutional rights. I hope you'll join me in enforcing accountability to those fundamental ideas, and I look forward to your questions. I yield back, Mr.
Tim Walz has been one of the best elected Democrats fighting back against not just Donald Trump's agenda, but the lies and the false narratives he is trying to push. That is so important in a time in which we have the opportunity to direct people towards a perfect example of what Donald Trump's authoritarian overreach looks like. The chaos he is creating in our lives, and the reason why it is so important to fight back Tim Walz is doing that. But of course, maybe the best example right now is Gavin Newsom, who is the governor who just went public over his call with Donald Trump, detailing the reasons why he is so terrified of his current cognitive state. I want to check out the clip in which he did so, and also an article that details more of what Gavin had to say about Donald Trump's cognitive state.
He can't handle. Because the other night, he came out and said that when you guys spoke, he warned you that if you didn't get things under control, he was going to bring in troops.
Stone cold liar. Stone cold liar. He made that up, like he makes up so many other things. He never said that.
And he also seemed to make up this idea that the National Guard did a great job last night when they weren't here.
They weren't even deployed, and he claimed victory. He's lost it. He hasn't lost a step. And I saw him trip on the steps today. Yeah. I mean, this is serious. He is not the same person that I dealt with just 4 years ago. And he's incapable now of even a train of thought. He's making things up, and he's putting people's lives at risk. And he's got a band of people that are complicit in this. And that's what's so damn alarming.
But Trump, incapable of even a train of thought during Newsom phone call report. California Governor Gavin Newsom has elevated his war with Donald Trump to a new level by suggesting the president, who turned 79 on Saturday, is flipping mentally based upon a recent phone conversation with him. According to a report from Alex Thompson of Axios Newsom, is complaining that his talks with the president over the use of the military in Los Angeles, which has plunged the country into increasing turmoil, have been fruitless because the elderly president has trouble staying on topic. Newsom told Fox LA, "Trump is not the same person that I dealt with just 4 years ago, and he is incapable of even a train of thought." He then added, "He's lost it." The Axios report from Thompson, co-author of the Biden-bashing Original Sin, is alongside Jake Tapper, added, "Newsom's jabs at Trump's age are part of a barrage of criticism he's tossed at Trump in the past week. He's called Trump a threat to democracy, is putting the U.S. Constitution on a road to authoritarianism." Newsom has also taken attacks on Trump to X, where he recently wrote, "Trump doesn't even know what day it is." He is clearly out of it. And this is the thing I have said was so concerning about that original Trump-Newsom phone call lie that we were detailing just the other day, when Donald Trump said, "Well, I called him yesterday, even though he called him Friday, and it was Tuesday." A lot of people were jumping to what would seem like an obvious conclusion that Trump was just lying. And I totally buy that as a plausible reason. But what I thought was probably more likely the case is Trump didn't even know what day of the week it is, that it had all kind of come together in his broken brain where nothing stays straight or exists for even more than a second. His whims are constantly fluctuating and changing. He's more enraged and extreme than ever. This is what happens with a person in cognitive decline. It is well documented how much more extreme you become as you become more out of it. Donald Trump is an absolute threat to our country without the breakdown in his brain, but this just makes it scarier. Gavin Newsom has made that very clear, and it's why we see so many Democratic governors standing up to Donald Trump, and it's why we need more Democrats calling out the Republican governors who are trying to aid in his plan. And we saw Greg Casar do that, calling out Greg Abbott, the Republican governor of Texas. And I want to take a look at what he had to say.
Make it clear, and the public outcry makes it clear too. Overreaching on immigration is not only a moral loser, it's a political loser for Trump so far. And protests over that overreach are spreading nationwide. No Kings rallies are planned in all 50 states this Saturday and are expected to be massive. But these protests are spreading across the country tonight. This is the scene in San Antonio, Texas right now. Hundreds of people holding signs, playing music, cheering and chanting, peacefully protesting ICE raids in their community. In response to organizers planning that San Antonio rally, Texas Governor Greg Abbott announced that he would deploy the National Guard to target anti-ICE protests across the Lone Star State. And joining us now is Texas Congressman Greg Casar. He's also the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. So we're showing photos. This is essentially part of your district.
No, I'm texting with people there
who were there right now. Well, first of all, I just described it as peaceful. It looked very peaceful. What are they telling you, people you're texting with on the ground?
Yeah, independent journalists right there are describing these peaceful protests where we just had protests in San Antonio just a couple days ago. Same thing. Hundreds of people, zero incident, but people like Donald Trump and Governor Abbott are actually trying to escalate the situation, right? They're trying to light the fire, pour gasoline on it. Everybody else gets burned and they try to blame Democrats for it. We need to make it very clear that it's people like Greg Abbott and Donald Trump that should own any chaos by their escalating of tensions, not Democrats or not people trying to defend the civil rights of people in their community.
The difference here, not to scare people from Texas who are watching, but they're probably firm stock. Governor Newsom is trying to protect the people in his state. I mean, he doesn't want it to be militarized. He doesn't want the National Guard to be intervening in these protests. That's sort of the opposite of the governor of Texas.
Right. In Texas, you have the president and the governor separating families just at a rate like we've never seen before. And then when people go out and do what anybody would do, protest people in your community being terrified, or even worse, people from your community being taken away unjustly, when they go out there and protest, we have a governor that I think sincerely wants to see someone get hurt so that then he can act like a strong man to come in and save the day, when really it's people like the governor that are stoking up this kind of division. They thrive on this chaos and on division, and we have to be able to go out there and say, no, we should keep everyone safe, including people that want to express their First Amendment rights.
What do you I mean, the thing is that for people who organize protests or are a big part of it, they want them to be peaceful because that makes a successful protest. What do you tell people who are calling your office, who may be scared about whether they'll be safe, don't know what to do, or fearful for themselves or their neighbors with these ICE raids?
Look, Donald Trump does not want people to hear about what he's really doing on immigration, because it is incredibly unpopular, including with people in Texas that voted for Donald Trump, for kids' hands to be zip tied together in a San Antonio courthouse. Because it might be an immigrant kid today, but then it very well could be your neighbor's kid, a U.S. citizen kid tomorrow. And so this is incredibly unpopular. And when folks are asking about, should I go out there and protest peacefully? Look, it's a long-held American tradition, and it oftentimes is the people of the United States that have made injustice public, even when the leaders of our country want to hide it. And so really, as an elected official, I can speak out, but it means even more when it's your neighbor talking to your neighbor, or somebody from work that says, hey, we're going to go out there and make our voices heard in what can be a scary time.
Mm-hmm. You were watching what ICE is doing is scary. I mean, it's horrifying, and what we're seeing in LA and other communities. You were kind of on the early end in 2018 of calling for the abolishment of ICE. You said recently, I think, that you kind of changed your position. But what do you think now about what should happen here with the future of ICE as they're being militarized by this administration?
The abuse is out of control. I think that we can all agree, kind of wherever it is you fall on the spectrum here in the Democratic Party, that this is just unacceptable. And what we're seeing now is that Donald Trump has gone so extreme that this isn't now just about immigrant rights. This is about the rights of everyone, including the rights of kids. I mean, let's just start with the kids. In Texas, an 8-year-old recovering from brain cancer was deported and separated from the medical care that it is that she needed. We have ICE officers showing up at our school districts, pretending that they're coming to check in on kids with parental consent, and their parents have not given consent, and their teachers are having to ask for warrants. In my district, as we just described, there are photographs of kids with their hands zip tied together. And so this is no longer just an immigrants' rights issue. It's an issue about protecting the rights of all Americans. And I think that connects to our need to reform these federal agencies to make sure that they actually follow the Constitution and basic rights. So I think we kind of have gone beyond the 2017-2018 moment to one where everyone's rights are at stake. I mean, look, you don't have to be an immigrants' rights voter to recognize that it's really scary for the President of the United States to take the Marines that are supposed to be protecting us in war and sending them for political purposes into our American cities. That's not what those Marines are trained for, and it's not what they want to do.
And we need more Democrats like Greg Casar, like Tim Walz, like Governor Newsom, willing to call out Donald Trump, and not just willing to call out what is happening, but make the case for a positive alternative. That is so important right now. Not only do we have to, of course, call out Donald Trump, but let's create the aspirational vision of what Democratic policy looks like applied in people's lives, where we do not create chaos, but we create better outcomes for all communities. That's what we need to be hammering home. We're going to be talking about that on this show. And if you want to support that and support independent media, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.